Hi everyone, I'm Emma Dweck. I'm an acupuncturist, and I've been creating some content about the pandemic and self-care during the pandemic, and as well as community care, because this is such an extraordinarily difficult time. It continues to be an extraordinarily difficult time, and it's really hard to be taking care of ourselves in this time. Today's video is actually about the summer season and the fire element. So in Chinese medicine, there are five elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And they each have correspondences within the body, but they also have correspondences in nature, and specifically for this video with the seasons. So during each season, there is an element that is sort of particularly activated and is particularly potent in that season. And so the summer season has to do with the fire element. And the fire element is all about connection and relationships. And I've been thinking a lot about this in the context of COVID because we all have fire elements that are right now extraordinarily out of balance. We can't help but have this severe imbalance in our fire elements right now. So what does that mean? So I was reading a blog that I wrote 2 years ago about summer and the fire element, and something that happens in the summer to many people it's like a type of seasonal depression. It's a summer seasonal depression. So most people think of seasonal depression as being something that happens in the wintertime. But in fact, there can be a seasonal depression in the summertime that is related to the fire element and things being out of balance. And so again, like, we are all out of balance because the ways that we are used to making connections and having relationship are completely off. Like, we are not able to have our usual ways of connecting. And that is really, really challenging. And so we're like creating these new ways of connecting, like Zoom and like outdoor visits with social distancing and masks, and but it's not really doing it for us, right? Like, it is and it isn't. Like, it's better than nothing. And it's still really, really hard, right? To not be able to hug our loved ones that we don't live with, or to not be able to go into the home of somebody that we really care about and miss, right? So we're all really struggling in this very, very profound way. And so I think just starting to understand that, at least from the lens of Chinese medicine, there are very, very specific and clear reasons that we're all feeling kind of so awful right at the moment. So the fire element is all about joy, right? And when we connect with others, we feel joy. Like, that's a foundational aspect of human health. And there are actually studies about people who have meaningful relationships living longer. And so from a Western medicine standpoint as well. So in terms of what we can do about it, like, I don't actually have a lot of great tips about what you can do about it right now. Although I think that understanding and acknowledging what's happening can be helpful. So the organ systems that have to do with the fire element are the heart, the pericardium, which is a sac around the heart. In Chinese medicine, it has its own function. And then the small intestine and the triple heater, which is not an organ, but it is a system in the body, has to do with temperature regulation and hormonal regulation and fluids. Anyway, but in terms of how these things are affecting us in COVID, the heart is in the Chinese classics is called the emperor, and it's so important. It's like the foundation. It's the center of health, and it needs to be protected, and it needs to be given joy. It needs to be able to express joy and connect with others, and So when it's not getting what it needs, right, there can be like really severe anxiety and really severe sadness and depression. So that sort of heart anxiety that you feel, that sort of tight fluttering in your chest, that's a heart thing. And sadness, and this sort of deep sadness, having to do with not being able to connect with other people right now. And it's okay to be sad. I think sadness is like a very appropriate reaction to the state of the world. And it can have a really profound effect on our health. And so then the pericardium is in charge of regulating sort of the appropriateness of relationships. And again, right now, it's like nobody knows what the appropriateness of relationships is. So how can the system in our body regulate that when we don't even know what's appropriate, and everybody's making their own decisions about appropriateness? So normally, like in non-pandemic times, the pericardium regulates, like if somebody's pericardium is really out of balance, like they might be really promiscuous or they might be really like a shut-in. Like those are the two extremes of sort of appropriate relationships. I mean, there are many extremes, but those are the two that the pericardium might, sort of be way too open or way too closed. And so right now it's like we're all in this like weird stunted place where we thought we knew what was appropriate, even if we had a healthy pericardium. Now we're having to like reinvent everything, right? And then in a very similar vein, the small intestine is in charge of like sorting out appropriateness of relationships and appropriateness of connections and deciding. And again, like there's so much information out there. I believe nobody knows a lot of what's going on and what to do in terms of coronavirus. And so everybody's having to make their own decisions. And some people are making different decisions than their loved ones. And that's really challenging. And that can create sadness and anxiety and anger and, and so it's just sort of this mess, right, in terms of our fire element. And then finally, the triple heater. The triple heater, as I said, has a lot of functions in the body, but it also, from a sort of sociological standpoint, is in charge of community relationships, like the greater community. And we are all, as I said in my last video, which is about the Black Lives Matter movement and holistic health, there's this amazing thing happening in our country where a lot of people are realizing that the community, the connections in the community and the community at large is really unhealthy. And so that's a part of a lot of our systems that is also very activated. And a lot of us are very confused, especially white people are very confused. And it's not just racial justice, it's like every aspect of our community, the education system, what are we going to do in terms of COVID, the healthcare system, how are we responding to this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just like a little overview of the fire element, and I hope that it helps you sort of understand a little bit about what's going on and maybe why this is so hard. And I'm always happy to discuss any of this if you have any questions about it. And if you feel like your fire element is really out of balance, I am doing a very limited number of telehealth visits right now. So if you want to set one of those up, you can always email me. And I look forward to making more content. Thanks for watching.